Hello everyone, Exacto here, back this time to discuss the next deck in our A to Z Riftbound series. So, to summarize so far, we've already done Ari, we've done Annie, which means the next deck in our alphabetical order is, drumroll please, Azir. Azir the weapons guy. So, maybe that's a little bit of a spoiler, but let's take a look at, as we always do, at the Legend Azir to find out kind of what his deck is about and how his deck wants to play what they want to do during their games. So let's take a look at our Legend here. He is green and yellow, the Calm and Order domains, and his Legend ability says, your Sand Soldiers have Weapon Master. Weapon Master is an ability that when a unit with Weapon Master comes into play, they may equip one of your gears for 1 power less than the equip cost. Oftentimes this means, since a lot of times weapons have a single power as the equip cost, they slide onto a weapon for free, but technically it reduces it by 1 power. He then goes on to have another ability that says for 1 energy and a tap, play a 2 Might Sand Soldier token unit to your base. But the caveat is you may only do this if you have played an equipment this turn. So that gives you a pretty clear outline of what Azir wants to do with his decks. He wants to be making units. He wants to be playing gears that allow him to make those Sand Soldier units. And he wants to be, I guess, attacking with suited up guys. So we'll take a look real quick at Azir from a meta standpoint here. Azir as a legend was pretty popular after Draven got his bans at the end of the Spirit Forged meta. He continues to this day in the Unleashed meta to be a relatively popular choice, as shown here on his meta usage. He's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6th on the meta list here. With a 51% win rate. And it seems that every tournament there's at least one Azir player that takes the deck pretty far into the top 8 perhaps, or even as recently as RQ Utrecht, a player by the name of Squirtle took the deck to win the whole tournament. So why not take a tournament-winning deck as the basis for what deck we will use in our A to Z challenge? So let's take a look here at what Squirtle was playing over here on Rift Atlas. So we've already taken a look at Azir, Emperor of the Sands, the legend. So let's take a look at our champion unit that we're using here. It is the yellow Azir, Azir Sovereign, and this says for 4, you get a 4 Might unit, with the option of paying an accelerate cost for 1 and 1 yellow more. You can have him enter ready, and he says, when I attack, you may move any number of your token units to this battlefield. So he's going to come in ready to roll, and he's not coming by himself. So when he comes into the battlefield, he brings all of those guys you've played prior to him throughout the game, all those guys that are presumably holding on to weapons. He's going to bring it with him when he attacks the battlefield. Moving on to the units in the deck that Squirtle played, you see it's not a very lengthy list. He is playing a grand total of 2 units. 1 Scuttle Crab. Scuttle Crab, just the value guy for 2. You get a 0 Might Crab that when he comes in, you draw 1. And when he dies, you get to look at the opponent's hand. Decent value play. He's also playing 1 copy of Vi Peacekeeper for 5 and 1 yellow. You get a 5 Might unit. With the ambush ability, means you can play them as a reaction to a battlefield when you already have units there. And when she attacks, stun an enemy unit there, meaning she takes out 1 unit. If they're attacking with a big, or if they're defending with a very big guy, and you don't want to lose any of yours, you bring in Vi, she stuns a unit, you take the battlefield. So being a weapons deck, you want to have units, so this may not seem on its surface to be enough units that are going to hold on to those weapons. So we need to then skip over the spells here and instead look at what gear Squirtle is running to get those 2 Might Sand Soldier units out from the legend ability. He's playing a grand total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times 3, 15 gears in this deck. And they start with, let's start with the 1-drops. For 1, he's playing 3 copies of the Soul Sword, which is for 1, you get +1 to your unit. Small increase, but you'll see that with this deck, what their ideal opening for their deck is, they want to have a 1-drop gear, so they can immediately, on as early as turn 2, play the 1-drop gear, activate the Azir ability to have a larger than normal unit on that first turn of the game. Similarly, Doran Shield. For 1, you get +1 to your unit, and it also gives it the tank ability. Maybe that will be relevant in our games. I don't know yet right now how relevant that will be. And then rounding out, he plays a grand total of 9 1-drop gears. Eye of the Herald is the 3rd one. 3 copies of this as well. For 1, you get a gear that does not add might to your unit, but it says when I move, play a 1 might recruit unit token here. So it kind of, whenever the unit that's holding the eye moves, at least if it falls in combat, maybe it can replace itself by leaving a 1 might guy behind to hold those weapons, perhaps. Continuing on with the weapons, he is playing 3 copies of the Brutalizer, a 2-cost equipment that gives normally +1 might. However, if it was attached to the unit this turn, it gets an additional 2 might. So that the turn it is attached to the unit, I should say, it gets a pretty big increase of 3. And then also classic yellow gear, 3 copies of the BF sword. For 4, you get a gear that gives a unit +3 might. So these can really be, even though he's not playing very many units in the deck here, these gears should really be considered an inclusion in his unit suite for this deck. Take a look, let's go further and take a look at the spells he's playing. He's playing the 6 copies of the typical green spells, 3 copies of On Guard, 3 copies of Discipline. Just a good way to take a battlefield, hold on to a battlefield, just good value plays. Discipline giving you a draw 1 on the end, On Guard giving you a +2 if it's the only unit you have there. We are also in the interest of protecting our units from spells or targeted removal, we are playing 3 copies of Defy. For 1 and a green, you counter a spell that costs no more than 4 and no more than a power. In the interest of removing what the opponent is doing, he is playing 3 copies of Hidden Blade, which it's in the name, it can be a hidden card, but for 2 and a yellow power, kill a unit at a battlefield, its controller draws 2. This card also has a secondary mode that I've seen used a lot as well, where if you can't or don't want to profitably kill the opponent's creature, you kill your own creature, and that way you get to draw 2. Maybe get a little draw power or a little bit of value back on something that would be removed or die anyway. You can kill it yourself and get those 2 cards on the back end of it. Similar to Vi Peacekeeper is the spell Back Off. Just for 3, you can stun a unit. It also can be hidden, and it says if you play this from your hand this turn, if you played this from your hand, draw 1. These spells can be used to stop opponents from taking the battlefield, to remove their own units when they're sitting on the battlefield. Hidden Blade also, I said, gives you a little bit of draw power in green and yellow that may not always have a good economy of card coming in. Going along with that, as well as 3 copies of the spell Death Grip, a reaction speed spell for 2. It says kill a friendly unit to give its might equal to its might to another friendly unit this turn, and you get to draw 1. So if maybe one of your guys is holding on to a shield and he's not going to be able to hold the battlefield against an opponent's attack, they commit their units to the 1 battlefield while you have 1 on the second. You Death Grip that unit that's going to die anyway, give that might over here. Maybe you can hold on to one of the battlefields and get another draw 1 as a result of this spell while adding some might to something that's holding something else. Kind of adding to the units here, he's playing 2 copies of Guards. For 3, you get to play a 2 Might Sand Soldier unit token. and you have the option of paying an extra yellow to have that unit token enter ready. Again, the legend Azir says all sand soldiers that come in are going to have the weapon master ability, so they're going to be able to pick up a gear for 1 power less. So you have a guy that has the potential to come in bigger than he would normally be and have him ready as well. The real game finisher, Azir's endgame power, his thing he wants to build towards to take battlefields and really put the game away, is his signature spell, Arise. 3 copies of this in this deck for 6 and 1 yellow or green power. This is a spell that says you play 1 2-might Sand Soldier unit token for each equipment you control, then ready 2 of those units. So I have seen in games, or I've watched from people playing, when they play this spell, they're often getting 3 to 4 2-might tokens per spell. And again, 2 of those come in ready. They pick up the weapons as they come in, and they are ready to rumble as soon as they come in. They can take battlefields. They can reinforce battlefields if you're already holding on to them. It is a big spell, big impactful spell, and again, it is the end game plan for these Azir decks. Real quickly, we'll talk about the battlefields. Game 1, typically people play Hall of Legends, which is a battlefield that says when you conquer here, you may pay 1 to ready your legend. I'm going to call back here to the Azir legend himself. We know it says for 1 and a tap, you get to play a 2-might Sand Soldier token. Use only if you've played an equipment this turn. It doesn't say anything about you may only use it once this turn. So let's say you play a 1-drop 1-drop gear. You tap your legend to play the token from Azir. You then move in and conquer the battlefield in game 1, Hall of Legends. You get to pay 1 again to untap Azir, and then for another 1, tap him again and make yet another token that turn. It is able to be abused well for this legend, as long as you have the runic power to spare, or the energy power to spare. When they are on the play, they typically like to play Trifarian War Camp, battlefield that says units here have +1 might. Makes your attackers a little bigger, makes your guys holding on to the battlefield once you've taken them a little bit bigger. They're getting a bonus to their might when they're already getting a bonus from the gear that they may be holding. Good if you're on the play and may be able to move in first before the opponent sets up their own defenses. And then when they're on the draw, they typically like to do Seat of Power. When you conquer here, draw 1 for each battlefield you or allies control. It's a pretty good neutral option for if you're needing to hang back a turn, set up a big double conquer. You can conquer 1 battlefield, conquer the Seat of Power, get a draw. Like I said, it's a pretty good option to have. If the runes make any difference here, they're playing 7 green, 5 yellow runes. Sideboard. Let's take a look at the sideboard of what Squirtle was using. First off, he's playing 2 copies of Charm, move an enemy unit. Okay, so if you're wanting to force a battle against a deck like LeBlanc that wants to put Karthus in the back line, keep him safe from harm, you have the option to bring this in and move that Karthus into the battlefield and take him out. You also have the option to move units off of battlefields, maybe just a good flexible green spell to have. Then we see maybe something that he was worried about with constructing this deck, worried about opponent gear decks. This is a gear deck in itself, but when you're facing opponent gear decks, he is playing 2 copies of Salvage and 1 copy of Disarming Rake. Salvage being a yellow spell, kill a gear, draw 1. Disarming Rake being a green unit, when you play me, kill a gear. Good against taking out an opponent's weapons, good against taking out a baited hook, good against taking out excuse me, any of the weapons that decks like Lucian may like to play. Good options to have to remove opponent weapons while you try to keep your own. He is also playing 2 copies of Ash. Ash is a unit that I think in these yellow decks, is used mainly against the Aurora decks. While you do have the option of Salvage and Disarming Rake to take care of Dazzling Aurora, Ash can come in before that Aurora hits the field, take it out of their hand, and if you take an opponent's if you use Ash to take the opponent's Aurora from their hand, you can really mess up those Dazzling Aurora decks game plan, making them find a second copy or whatever it may be, you can slow them down a lot by slowing them down like that. And then finally, the 8th card is another copy of Vi Peacekeeper. If you need another stun attached to a large unit, there she is. So, in summary, Azir wants to make tokens. He wants to play weapons first, make tokens, and finish the game with a big giant Arise spell. I'm pretty excited to play this deck. Its popularity has fallen a bit recently. Like I said, it was very popular for a while at the end of the Spirit Forged meta, kind of after Draven got his bans. But it's kind of fallen off a little bit in recent tournaments, but like Squirtle showed with RQ Utrecht, there's always one player who can take a deck like this and seems to perform really well for it. So the power is there, and I'm interested to see how it performs. Will we do better than we did with our Annie deck? Annie went 4-1. Can we go 5-0 with Azir? I'm very excited to find out. So once again, thank you, as always, for stopping by. Please remember, if you like the content, to like, comment, and subscribe. And I will see you in the games. See you in the next video.